Can a 4-foot tall, 62-pound robot improve your customer experience? I'm Tonya Hall for ZDNet and Tech Republic, and joining me is Steve Carlin. He is the Chief Strategy Officer at SoftBank Robotics. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you for having me.
What does SoftBank Robotics do, and what is your scope of responsibility there?
Sure. We have a line of humanoid robotics that we've brought into the marketplace globally, and really designing to engage people. We originally had a robot called Now, which was a little bit over 2 feet tall, a lot of fun, a great educational tool, and we expanded that into a 4-foot tall humanoid robot by the name of Pepper, which I think you've seen and been able to interact with some. And again, the idea being, how do you utilize this kind of technology, both physical and software, to engage people and deliver a value proposition that makes sense in the marketplace?
On your website, you feature what you describe as an innovative and interactive customer engagement platform. You talked a little bit about Pepper. Go into detail.
Sure. I think what's important in robotics is to think about the use case that you're designing for. And so what we focused on was, how do you leverage this kind of technology, a form factor in the form of a 4-foot tall humanoid robot, to talk to people, to engage people, and to help them, whether it's through a purchase decision or getting information about a product or service. How do you leverage that platform to deliver that value out in the marketplace? And so that's what we've spent really the last 4 years working on. Pepper was originally designed to go into SoftBank's mobility stores. So it fits a really nice place in a retail setting. And think of retail in a large sense. That could be not only a store like we normally think of, but it could also be in a bank setting, a retail bank setting, or in an automotive setting. And so there's lots of great places to go leverage this technology and engage the clients or customers that are coming into those locations.
How are robots being used in therapy, mental health, and education settings to be a force multiplier for professionals in those fields?
Well, it's interesting when you get into the notion of health and well-being, how interesting a dynamic that robotics can play. And we find this, by the way, back in the retail setting too. People tend to open up to robots in a way that maybe they wouldn't with people. So let me give you an example from the retail world that's actually germane to your question. If I walk up to you as a sales associate and I say, "Can I help you?" you're probably going to say 9 times out of 10, "No, thanks, I'm just looking." And that probably has more to do with the fact that I don't know you, and I don't want to be rude, and I don't want to feel pressured. And there's all this baggage that comes with our interaction, meeting each other for the first time. Well, the robot sort of dispenses a lot of that inherent barrier. And so you immediately just assume it's there to help you. And so you start asking questions. And I think that's also true in other settings, like your question around healthcare. I think it's a very fun and engaging platform. And so people tend to want to open up and answer questions or get information in a way that maybe you just can't get from the people that you're interacting with.
Let's elaborate on that a little bit. In fact, chatbots, which have been around for a while, they're nothing new to customer service. What can robots offer that improves upon that human-to-human experience?
Well, we employ chatbots, and the advantage that we have is we have a physical presence. So when you're on your computer, when you're on your phone, there's no physical presence. And yeah, it's certainly valuable, but the interaction that you have with a humanoid robot with that presence is actually, I would even argue, exponentially better and more engaging, because there's an empathetic relationship at that point. You don't have an empathetic relationship with your computer or your phone. But when Pepper is interacting with you and gesticulating and mimicking how you speak, you create a bond with it in a way that you just can't get from other technology platforms. And chatbots would be a good example. They power the dialogue, they power the interaction, but the physical form that a robot takes on, I think allows for a deepened engagement.
How important is the cloud in the human-facing robot performance?
Well, what the cloud allows you to do is just make that entity that much more intelligent. And by the way, it doesn't matter what physical form you're talking about. We use Pepper, obviously, but whether that's a speaker sitting on your desk or your laptop, the cloud allows for almost an infinite amount of data sets to be brought into the discussion, if you will. And so Pepper, in this instance, as we start to expand onto cloud architecture and allow us to allow our clients to tap into whatever sorts of data sets they have or other data streams, maybe from other IoT devices. It allows for an intelligence to come through in the interaction. And really what that boils down to, which we think is so powerful, is a more personalized approach to that interaction. So I can gear things more towards you and Pepper having a conversation, as well as Steve and Pepper having a conversation that might be slightly different based off of who I am and what my interests are. And the cloud allows us to do that in a way that having a local data set just never would, right? So we have an infinite amount of data sources to pull from. We can overlay that with some artificial intelligence through our architecture that allows, just like a chatbot, that allows for a much more personalized interaction.
How do you go about researching what an approachable, friendly form is for a robot?
Well, many years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, as we were developing Pepper, that was when that work was all done. Now, bear in mind, we had a robot already called Now that we really took a lot of learning from. So if you look at the two, there's a lot of similarities. Fingers look similar, but Pepper has a few more of them. The face on Pepper is a little more face-like, not too much more, but not a cylinder like Now was. The eyes were a little more expressive. We put LEDs around it to give you cues and clues in the interactions. So we really built off the platform and the learning that we had gotten. And then just understanding the environment you want to put it into is sort of the other piece to it, some industrial design, if you will, to understand, well, look, it needs to sit in a retail setting for, say, 8 to 10 hours. So the battery has to be relatively large, which means that dictates sort of the design from the base. So there's no legs, there's 3 wheels. That actually helps support the housing for the battery, but it also allows for stability. So you just start to take now the practical things of, well, we want to make certain that it's got a low center of gravity, so put the battery at the bottom too. But I also need it to interact with people, kids, for example, as well as adults, and want them to approach it. So how do we do that with the arms and the face and the eyes and the lights? And so all of that comes together in a form factor that, like we said, was 4 feet tall, about 62 pounds, with a tablet on the front and 2 arms and a really friendly face.
Okay, along those lines, what are the biggest challenges then that robot developers face with natural language processing?
With just natural language processing or across the board? Because there's lots and lots of
Well,
challenges.
let's start with natural language processing, or
Sure.
maybe just talk about the biggest challenges that they have.
Well, with NLP, one of the issues is the system being able to hear you. I know that sounds mundane, but the reality is you want to put these platforms and this technology in lots of different places. If I'm putting it in a busy train station, for example, I have to take into account that it's hard to hear normal people, much less, taking a system that has microphones and NLP and a Wi-Fi connection and trying to make all that work. So you have to be a little thoughtful in that sense of where you put this technology. And by the way, that's true of any technology, not just Pepper. If you're going to have NLP, you need to take that into consideration. More broadly, I think one of the things that is challenging for us is the expectation that you have when you walk up to Pepper. It's an incredibly engaging platform. It's super friendly. It's very inviting. And so you want to have a very deep interaction with Pepper. Now, that means you're going to just start rifling off questions. You're going to start having a dialogue with it. And that can overwhelm any system, right? Because the reality is we're not at the stage of general artificial intelligence where a system can answer any question you can think of, transition seamlessly across topics, go deep into data and analytics, et cetera, and read your cues and clues to understand what you're really trying to say, like a person could. And so that's one of the challenges we have. We really have to be thoughtful about the interaction and how we guide and steer the interaction so that you get the most out of it, but so that you don't overwhelm the system that's been built out.
Steve Carlin, Chief Strategy Officer at SoftBank Robotics. If somebody wants to find out, I don't know, how to connect with you, maybe get a Pepper for her studio to do technology interviews with her, how might somebody go about doing that?
Well, we would love for you to start by coming to our website, softbankrobotics.com/US, and interact with us through that medium. And then from there, we'll get in touch and figure out what the right way to proceed is.
All right, thanks, Steve. And if you guys want to find more of my interviews, you can do that right here on ZDNet or Tech Republic, or maybe find me by going to tonyahall.net. I've got links to all my social sites. Thanks for watching.